sometime early last year.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, I don't remember which analyst it was on MLB Network, but they said he's going to be the Patrick Mahomes of baseball in terms of the impact he's going to have on the league, like the superstardom he's going to have, and he's going to elevate the Kansas City Royals to become one of the most watched teams, and that's going to start their rise up to the top. Like he's going to have that type of impact. He's he dominated AA and AAA, 290, 361, 575 slash, 33 homers, 29 steals, Baseball America's minor league player of the year. I mean, he's a potential 30-30 guy. Maybe not in his rookie year. I think he could still, I think Steamer has him at 24 and 18, if I'm not mistaken. But, I mean, he could within a year or two get to 30-30. And, I mean, what you look at everything in his profile, too, even just like his strikeout rate, too. Like his K rate last year went from 24% 2 years ago to 22.5% last season. Like he's seeing the ball better. I remember actually I heard someone bring up, I forgot where I heard it, but they said he actually faced Julio Reyes before, and that they said that he worked it to a full count when they matched up against each other. I didn't hear what the result of the at bat was, but they said took it to a full count. It was like a 8 or 9 pitch at bat. Looked like he belonged to face that type of competition. I do think that if you find out Bobby Witt Jr. expected to break camp, be the Royals starting shortstop, that ADP is going to shoot up.
I think for sure.
Yes, and I think that right now getting him near pick 100, a guy with that much potential steals in his profile, especially if you don't get steals earlier in the draft. I mean, I think there's 20 stolen bases there, like as a floor for him this year, with how much the Royals like to run, especially too. So David, I think it's
where's
fantastic.
He going to play?
I mean, didn't they say Alberto Mondesi's a part-time player? I mean,
well, they're like trying to protect his health, yeah. But I mean, Nicky Lopez kind of broke out last year. Are you moving Witt off his position immediately?
I mean, he can play the outfield.
Bobby Witt, I should say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They have another Witt. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to clarify there. So they could put Merrifield in the outfield, and then you have like third base open or second base open, depending on where you put Mondesi. But I guess you are moving Bobby Witt off of his position immediately. For me, like in a draft and hold, completely different consideration. I'm not averse to taking him in like a main event situation though, where I have to hold him until he comes up.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that would make me a bit nervous, sight unseen. We have some lack of clarity with the CBA and what it might do for players. I totally understand that point. And there is a lot of upside, but I'm a little nervous. I don't hate his ADP. He's not on my hate list, but he is somebody that I've been a little bit nervous from being a top 100 pick already, just because of the uncertainty of when he's going to be up.
Now, David, my new drinking game for you is every time you say, I forgot who said this on MLB Network, but Bobby Witt's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes.
I've said it like 2 or 3 times. Like,
and it's been 2 or 3 weeks in a row. So I'm going to tally it up at the end of the season, and that's how many shots I'm going to take.
Fair enough.
Live on air.
The one thing I will say, so Paul, if tomorrow the Royals announce Bobby Witt starting with the Royals from day one, he's going to break camp as our starting third baseman or whatever they say. Where do you think his ADP goes to?
Top 50.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's what I was thinking.
Starts getting drafted around Tim Anderson, Trevor Story, which is top 40.
That's why I think
where he'd start to go.
I really do think
that's fair, but I guess for me, I would say like, what's the likelihood that is going to happen? You think it's higher. I'm not sure if it is, and that's kind of the calculus that we're doing. But again, in a draft and hold, like I think people get really hung up in like a 50-round league of I have to take my starting roster in order and then all reserves. It's like, no, I'm going to take Bobby Witt. Like it's hard. It's a hard mindset to get into, but when you're doing a 50-round draft and hold, it's for the full season. So yes, you have to pay pick 100 for him or 95 for him right now. But when he comes up, he should be like a top, 100 guy from that point forward. And you're just kind of taking that gamble right there. I think people have a trouble conceptualizing the entire season when they're doing a 50-round draft and hold. Instead of just drafting the best players, they want to draft their team in roster order, starters, and then reserves.
No, that makes sense. And I think the best part about
I think is a mistake, by the way, is what I'm saying.
You said you do think
I think that's a mistake to do that. To get so bogged down in having to draft your starting roster first, you should be open to taking guys like Bobby Witt Jr. in draft and holds a lot more. Like I could be swayed. You've kind of swayed me a bit on taking him in a 50-round draft and hold right now because of the upside. But in like a online championship right now or a main event, I know they're not drafting right now, but if they did with the news we have today, I could never pay 100 for that. Could you do that in a league where you only have your 7 reserves and like an NFBC main event? Would you still pay pick 100 for him with the news that we have right now?
I think it would kind of depend on how my roster is starting to shape up as I go. If I see in the beginning that I'm lacking steals, that he could be a guy that I would take a shot on because there's not many guys that could steal 30 bases.
What if you already have a great shortstop and then you're putting him at mid, so you're putting less pressure on him to be your guy? Would that, if you got Trey Turner, if you got the first pick, would you be bumping Witt up or down? Because he's giving you steals, but you need a lot of steals. Sorry, I keep adding parts to it. Answer. You can answer.
No. Like if I get Trey Turner, then I'm 100% not going to reach for him. Like that's a fact. I think it's in those types of leagues, it's going to depend on how my roster is shaping up, and I would take him more aggressively if I'm like, you know what, like, dang, like I'm looking at my team, like I missed out on all the guys that have 5 category players. I'm not, going to wait and try to take like a Miles Straw. Like I want a guy that I'm not going to rely on players like that. Like,
so I don't like Straw either. I'm not a huge Rabbit fan. Justin and I were talking about him the other day on the pod, and he did point out, he hit for a pretty decent average and scored some runs or whatever. So he's not completely empty. But when we say empty speed, I think we're talking mostly about the lack of power from somebody like Straw. But there are fits for him in the fantasy realm. I'm just not a huge fan personally. But anyway, good talk on Witt. I think you swayed me a little bit.